I was walking through the kitchen going, hey, 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 run for your life.
I was going stab this way.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Welcome back. We're so late. So late, in fact, that we've changed the name of the podcast. We're now the Barely Sober Book Club,
Mm-hmm.
which personally I think
Cheers.
is a much better name.
Mm-hmm.
But what hasn't changed is the two hosts, me, William Woodard, and her, Alex Green.
Yes, indeed. We've returned after a
Right.
long hiatus. I
Right.
think it's actually been a full fiscal/calendar year.
I don't think it's been quite that long.
Okay.
I think the last one was in like October,
Oh yeah, I guess Sabriel wasn't that long ago.
and we started the Arthur Morgan Demon Hunter
Oh
book,
yeah. All right.
which I did finish, by the way.
Did you? Did you like it?
It was fine, which is kind of how we felt about it in the initial episode, which is why we didn't continue because it was just fine,
Yeah.
and we didn't really have anything to say about it.
No, the only thing to say about it is that it's like Arthur Morgan's sequel.
Yeah, it's just fine.
Yeah.
Um, but we're doing the most late recap of all of the like side books that we read over the course of 2023. And now that the year's almost half over, it seems like the perfect time to put it out.
Yeah.
But we've got a lot of books. I read
More than me.
more books than I've ever read in my life last year. So it might be a little lopsided.
That's fine. I kept it to a modest 15. So, and that's including like our books that we have read on the podcast.
Right.
So, I slacked off, but I
That's
did my
okay.
best.
That's okay. Um, I'll start with one of the ones that I read uh, pretty early in the year. It was Cursed City by C.L. Werner and or Werner.
Mm.
It's a Warhammer book, but like the Age of Sigmar Warhammer, not 40K.
What's the difference?
One's sci-fi, one is fantasy.
Is 40K sci-fi?
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, but the bleak, grim, dark nature remains throughout.
Okay.
Um, boy, it's been a really long time since I read this book, and I don't remember much of it. But I do remember that it was kind of rad.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to particular like. This isn't gonna blow the doors off of anybody, but like people who like Warhammer really love the books, and I think I was like, I'll give it a shot. What the hell? And it was pretty decent.
Was it long?
No, because it was the audiobook, so I think it was
Okay.
only like 10 hours.
Oh, that's a nice reasonable length for a book
Yeah,
to be.
and it was a fun little fantasy, sort of grim, dark adventure. I couldn't tell you anything about the plot. I just remember enjoying it at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads,
Okay, that's pretty good.
which is I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's kind of all I have to say about that.
I feel like that's gonna be like not too far away from a lot of the things I
Yeah,
have to say about a lot
once
of the books I read this past
when we
year.
start getting closer to the books that we read towards the end of the year, we'll be like, oh yeah,
I have more things to say now.
right.
Probably.
Do yours. This one. Crooked Little Vein by Warren Ellis.
Okay, so I got this book because you told me that it was one of your all-time favorite books, and so I was like, okay, I'm gonna
Yes.
read it. And I read it, and I've never had a book make me close it because I was literally gonna throw up before reading this book. And it was so vile. And it's like
Mhm.
like intentionally so,
Yeah,
but
almost comedically vile.
yeah, there were parts of it that I found very, very funny. And there were other parts of it that I was literally nauseated to my core. And I
Mhm.
had to take a break from that's never I read a book about eating people this year.
Right.
And it didn't come close to giving me the kind of like visceral reaction as reading this book did. And I feel like that's probably a marker of its success, but
Depends, I guess, on like it did set out to be disgusting.
yeah, like it's about a guy who's a private investigator question
Yes.
mark who just has like the world's worst luck when it comes to just getting into the most grotesque random situations of all time. There's a scene where he gets his balls injected with a bunch of saline and they're just like hanging out super swollen for the better part of a day. There's like I can't even I've
I remember a scene, the basket, the saline testicles scene, where he's so upset that he just goes and sits in the car, and it's described in significant detail of him trying to like stuff his testicles into the car.
yeah. It's so disgusting. I'm not going to say I didn't like it, but I would never read it again. It was
Honestly, that's fair.
yeah.
You made it through.
I made it through. I gave it a solid 3. The storytelling is good. Like Warren Ellis, incredible writer, obviously. And so that part was not what I took issue with. It was the fact that like I felt like I was going to be sick reading this
Yeah,
book. But
and that's fair.
yeah, it's like a fun little detective jaunt with like a cast of vile characters. And
Yeah,
but like at his core the protagonist, like even though he's like so cosmically exhausted from his own life, he's still likable and a little endearing in his own way, and he has this like fun and cute relationship with like
yeah, that's
the
right.
female protagonist Trix, I think her name is.
Something like that.
And like they have really cute banter and a really cute dynamic. And yeah, like it's not a bad time. It's just like the situations that he finds himself in are so disgusting.
And
And I
it's
needed
like
many breaks.
it's almost like such a over the top satiric look at America, because the whole point, like
Right,
the whole
yeah.
plot of the book is that he's trying to find like the real like the second Declaration of Independence, which was made
Mhm.
on like meteor paper, and when you turn the pages it compels you to do what it says.
Right. Yeah.
And like there's a scene where they go to dinner with this like oil tycoon or something, and it's like in a slaughterhouse steakhouse where you're like
Yeah.
watching the the cows get slaughtered that you're going to eat. It's so ridiculous.
And the meat comes out raw and
Yeah,
like there's still like skin on it.
it's like so in your face satirical that it's just disgusting.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And like that wasn't even the part that made me like nauseous to the point of wanting to throw up. I literally couldn't tell you anything about that scene because I've traumatically blocked it out. It's when they go to that guy's house. It's like a lodge in the middle of nowhere. He takes him into his office. There's like a stuffed bear involved and just like a lot of bodily fluids and a lot of drugs. And I don't even care
I
to
must have
recall
blocked
it.
that out too. I don't remember that either.
It was like so awful. I don't remember what happened other than I hated every second of it.
All right. So Next book, I guess, on my list, ooh, is The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie.
Mm.
The first book in the first Law trilogy. And this book, I'm currently reading the third book in this particular series. And this book I loved. I went through it real quick.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's like really gritty, not quite grim dark. Like the world that it's in isn't great. Nobody's particularly happy. The good guy kingdom is still an oppressive nightmare kingdom. Everybody's disgusting and like dirty and gross. But man, he all of the characters are so rich. Like one of the main characters is a barbarian dude called Logan Nine Fingers, who's also got like this weird, almost like in D&D terms, like a barbarian rage state that he calls the Bloody Nine, that just takes over and he kills literally everything in sight, even if it's a friend.
Is it similar to Matthew Good's Blood Rage in
Uh,
Discovery of Witches?
I would say because that was pathetic.
We didn't like his snarling.
It was giving boyfriend ASMR.
Yeah, that's so true.
But what I thought was interesting about the blade itself is that it's it doesn't necessarily have like a plot that runs through. Like all of the different POV characters have their own story going on. But it's not, I wouldn't say it's like compelling story that each of them have.
Okay.
They're all interesting, but about like 2/3 of the way, but of through the way, oh my god, 2/3 of the way through the book, it turns into all of the different POV characters who have been separated, like none of them knew of their existence, all kind of coalescing into one spot towards the end,
Hmm.
and it turns into a sort of like getting the party together story,
Those are always so good.
which is so good.
Hmm.
Especially when you've like started to really enjoy all of the characters,
Yeah.
and then you can tell that they're all headed to the same place, and you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, they're doing it.
Yeah.
Um, if you have not read these books, self a favor. They're so good. They have been like one of my newest favorite series that I've come across.
That's awesome.
Um, oh, what do you say that we do some nonfiction
Okay.
with You Just Need to Lose Weight and 19 Other Myths About Fat People by Aubrey Gordon.
Yes.
Uh,
So,
and Aubrey jump scare.
yeah. Well, I
Prepare
mean,
yourself.
if this was written by Aubrey Graham, it would be like Aubrey body shaming Graham. This would be a very different book. Um, this book was really, really good. Aubrey
Mhm.
Gordon is someone whose work like I haven't been following for many years, but she's like a big voice in like the fat justice and fat activism spaces. And I
Mhm.
found out about her mostly through the podcast Maintenance Phase, which I love with my whole heart, that she does with Michael Hobbs. And I would say that this book is honestly kind of like a Cole's Notes of a lot of the different episodes and topics that they cover in that podcast. So it almost just serves as like a great reference book for anybody who's looking to kind of dismantle a lot of the ingrained beliefs they have about like anti-fat bias and a lot of like a lot of the kind of like insidious diet culture things we all grow up with,
Right.
especially in like affluent white culture where it's all about like losing weight is just about calories in versus calories out, or fat people are unhealthy, or we're in the middle of this obesity epidemic, or that fat acceptance glorifies obesity and that people can
Yeah.
literally die from being too fat. Where, like, if you take any of these kind of just accepted universal truths and you look at them with any amount of like scientific scrutiny, they all fall apart within the first like 30 seconds of taking a look at it.
Yeah,
And
of course.
yeah, and I think for me as someone who grew up in like a very kind of like orthorexia minded household where there was a lot of like morality placed on the food you consume and like what activities you participate in that promote like weight loss or not. Um this like her work and maintenance phase and this book is all just like very healing to people with
I
diet
bet.
culture trauma. And yeah, I listened to the audiobook. She reads her own audiobook. I really enjoyed it. She's a great storyteller. And it's I think it serves as like a nice kind of jumping off point for you to keep doing your own research or listen to the podcast or
Mm,
explore other um like fat acceptance authors or things like that to like explore more of their work. But overall, loved it. Really enjoyed the book.
good.
Hmm.
Uh, we'll keep with the nonfiction angle because I read um, the Act of Creating by Rick Rubin,
Oh yeah.
and it's one part sort of like it's not quite as in depth as say Stephen King's On Writing,
Hmm.
but he does go into a lot of like the creative process and what how to find the most efficient and best way to find your creative process,
Nice.
which is really interesting. And I can't say that any of it particularly helped me like in any way, but it was nice to hear someone basically kind of give you permission to just do whatever the fuck you need to do.
Yeah.
And because it is Rick Rubin, there were a lot of like self-help kind of affirmation bullshit, like hippie bullshit in there.
Yeah, of course.
But for the most part, it was fairly decent and relatively quick.
That's
Like I
nice.
don't think I listened to the audiobook and it was pretty quick. And
Did
each chapter, if you can call it that, because each one is like 2 minutes long, but each chapter is like bookended by the fucking like singing bowl, like doom.
like a meditation.
Yeah, and I was like, this is corny, buddy.
Did he read his
But
own book?
yeah, of course.
Nice.
And to his credit, Rick Rubin's got a great voice for speaking.
He does, yeah.
But I don't know. Like it was fine. Like I got some pretty decent insights out of it. Um, his kind of section on self-criticism and almost like self-punishment was
Mm.
really interesting. But I got about as much out of it as I thought I would. I didn't think that shit was gonna like change my life,
Right.
but it was something I was curious about.
Yeah, it can be kind of refreshing in like the not necessarily like self-help space, but in the kind of like guidebook almost with a certain
Mm,
skill space to just have somebody who is obviously very good at what they do tell
right.
like kind of give you permission to just follow your gut instinct and approach a process in a way that makes sense to you and your like work style
Yeah.
instead of needing to follow like this really specific epic morning routine type regimen for creativity. I think that can
Yeah.
just kind of be a bit liberating.
Yeah, and also the singing bowl helped a lot too.
I bet it helped you like really ground into your craft.
Yeah, it did. Let's see. Your next book is The Guest List by Lucy Foley.
Ooh, okay. This was a really fun little mystery novel that I listened to, and I would recommend engaging with this book with the audiobook because it's a full cast of characters playing
Ooh,
every character.
love that.
Um yeah, the premise is like this very rich fashion designer is marrying this other very rich reality TV Bear Grylls type person on this little remote island, I think off of like Scotland. And they're all on this island together. It's very, very small. It's essentially just like a little castle. And then this family, this married couple who keep the castle and live in a little cottage nearby. And they just run events and weddings out of it. And they got like a big discount on this place because they want publicity for their little wedding venue. And there's a bunch of different characters, and one of them gets murdered, and it starts with the murder, but you don't know who's murdered. So the whole book is just trying to figure out like who murders who. And
Right.
it's not obvious. Like it's a very fun, I found it very, very fun. It was just like a really good who done it.
We love a good mystery novelle.
Yeah, absolutely. I super enjoyed it. Would recommend.
Great. All right. Then this next one is ooh. The I read the Dark Elf trilogy. I forget it's the first three books in the Drist Do'Urden
Oh.
series. The
Mhm.
D&D Forgotten Realms books. Um boy, I love these. Especially like the first one's really good because it kind of gives you an insight into and if you don't know D&D lore, this is gonna either bore you to death or fly right over your head. So I apologize in advance. But the first book, Homeland, takes place almost exclusively in Menzo Berenzan, and it kind of details Drow life and how their society operates. And uh, Drist is born into the family of what the hell? His
I was gonna
mother is
it's gonna be like Bane Ray.
no. It's fucking Do'Urden, you idiot. Um,
Oh right, duh.
yeah, I just said it. But his mother is Matron Malice,
Her
or I
first name is
believe
Malice.
she's just called Matron Malice.
That's pretty dope.
But I believe she's mentioned in Baldur's Gate 3.
Mm.
Um, but like the first book is just kind of like how Drist grows up, and it's really interesting from the like Drow society's perspective. But the second book is my favorite of the three because he's wandering around the Underdark. Because he left home because he was essentially going to be sacrificed to Lolth, but his dad, Zachnafane, which is a great name. His dad, Zachnafane, was basically like, "I'll sneak you out the back, so you don't have to do that because you're a good boy."
Nice.
And exile is mostly just Drist wandering around the Underdark, dealing with hook horrors. He meets up with the Zwerfneblin. He hangs out with one dude who has two two pickaxes for hands because he lost both of them.
Okay.
I forget the guy's name, but it's very much a, like Zwerfnieblen name or Deep Gnome.
Right, yeah.
Uh, and the third book, Sojourn, is him coming up to the surface of Faerun and kind of experiencing surface life for the first time. And he
Okay.
like makes friends with a hunter who kind of teaches him like his ranger skills. And I believe he gets like he teaches him how to use scimitars, which Drist eventually gets his famous scimitars icing death and Twinkle. He's got a really embarrassing name for the second one.
Twinkle?
It's I don't know if that's actually what it's called, but I know one of them's called icing death,
Okay.
which is sort of like imbued, like it's a they're both magic items,
Of course.
but one of them is got ice imbued, and the other one is fire, but it has a very embarrassing name,
Is it
and
like
I want
sizzle?
no, it's worse than that. I don't remember, but the series is great. I love Drist. It's pronounced Menzo Baranzan, for God's sakes, please.
Not Menzo Baranzan. Yeah.
But I love them. If you like Dungeons and Dragons, if you've been playing Baldur's Gate and you want to know more, read these books.
Yeah, learn about the drows you all love to play.
Yeah, they're great. And also, maybe shut up about them being marginalized because they're bad.
Yeah, slavers, killers.
Yeah, they sacrifice their own children for a spider god. Come on, man. Anyway, boy, what a series of books, huh? Next on your list, however, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden.
Okay. Okay, I loved this book. This
Mm.
could be there's a trilogy for this book, but it could also be just a really good standalone fantasy book by itself.
Mm.
And it's steeped in like old Russian folklore. It's about this kind of noble Russian man living with his family in the woods. And they have this like estate kind of on the edge of this like very old kind of spooky forest. And there's a lot of like little household spirits. There's a lot of, I think, like Russian folklore spirits and like terminology that are woven through this book. And as someone
Right.
who's not familiar with Russian folklore, I don't know what's like
No,
a
me either.
reference to something or what is like something the author made up.
Right,
But
right. It's like reading the Witcher books and then finding out later that like half of that shit is Polish folklore, and you're like, oh, I thought he
totally.
was just really clever.
Yeah, fully. So the story centers around the main character Vasilisa. I probably butchered her name, and her family. Her mother dies when she's young, so they grow up motherless. She has a couple of other siblings, I think she's the youngest, or maybe she's the middle child, but it borders on the like not like other girls. It almost could be, but she's not like other girls in the way that she's like super scrawny and weird, and she's constantly described as being really ugly. But it's kind of like implied that she's not. She just has this like wild kind of like not of this world vibe to her,
Mm.
and she can see all of the household spirits nobody else can. She can talk to horses. She is just like this weird little kid who has this inherent relationship with the forest and like the magical hidden world. And a lot of it is just her trying to grow up in a household that is like trying to actively oppress her and get her to marry really young. Like she gets this new stepmother who's incredibly pious and like to the point where she goes into like hysterical. Oh, I think she's actually, maybe I won't say too much in case it's anyone wants to read it. But the mom is like very like a religious fanatic and
Of course.
wants to like marry her off quickly because this girl is so strange and clearly like a bit of a heretic in her own way and wants to just get her out of the house. There's a really interesting relationship between kind of like old pagan magic and spirits and like the oppressive nature of like
Mm.
religion and how um it can like I don't even know. It's really good. It's a really good like fairy tale and there's two other books that I'm going to read. I have the second book in this series and like it's kind of like Cinderella-y in some ways where it's like evil stepmom, but I feel like the main character has a lot more depth and many more layers because she has all these like cool little abilities that she's trying to parse out and figure out for herself as she's like growing up in a place that like just nobody fully understands her. I think it's a really good like examination too of like loneliness in
Mm.
like the kind of like loneliness you feel growing up in a family where you don't really have anything in common with anybody.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Let's see. My next book. Oh God. I read The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, which is
Mhm.
the first book in like era 2 of Mistborn.
Okay.
The whole shit is, and this is where we're gonna lose all Brando Sando people because I fucking hated this book. I hated it. I hated the way that the characters were portrayed. They're
Mhm.
all corny. I hated the way the plot laid. Actually, that's not true. The plot was fine. It was like your it was such a bog standard like action movie plot structure
Mm.
that I can't hate it. But the characters, ugh. I don't get what you guys see in this shit. And like the magic system, guys, what are you talking about? When I hear people saying like, "Oh my gosh, Brandon Sanderson has like blown the doors off of magic system in fantasy books," what are you talking about? It's nonsense. He doesn't even follow the his own rules.
Oh, really?
Like, okay, here's the way at least the main character in this book, he can control middle, I think. I it might yes. He has the ability to like cuz I think everybody has two magical abilities that they have access to.
Okay. So he's like a metal bender.
Kind of. Like one of his abilities is the ability to push and or pull metal. His other ability is to reduce or increase his own weight.
That sounds boring as fuck. Sorry.
And to his credit, Brandon tries to make that very interesting by having um oh, and the guy's name,
What is it?
the main character's name is Waxilium Lad Ladrian.
Okay.
And gang. That's not a good name.
It
But
sounds
the
so fan fiction, like teenage fan fiction.
yeah. And like because it takes place in the second era, which is sort of like the that world's equivalent of like the 1800s. It's very Victorian. There's like revolvers, people are using like Winchester rifles and stuff like that. And he tries to do cool stuff with the two abilities that Wax has, which is pushing metal and making himself heavier or lighter by like taking a shell casing and like throwing it on the ground and then making himself really light and then pushing the shell casing so that he flies. And it's like, this is
Whoa.
really lame. It's so lame. I would have loved to have liked this book, but if this is what Brandon Sanderson is doing, count me out, buddy. Sorry, gang.
Yeah, that's so fair. I remember when you were reading it, you had a very kind of like, is that it mentality
Yeah,
with it.
because everybody talks about Brandon Sanderson as the second coming of fucking Christ.
Yeah.
And I finally read a Brandon Sanderson book and I was like, this is what you guys have been talking about?
I remember you
This is what
saying,
you guys are like breaking the doors down for? You're going to conventions for this?
yeah, I remember you talking a lot too about like the characters being kind of like really juvenile despite being
Yes.
adults and being like really kind of one-dimensional.
The humor's incredibly juvenile.
Yeah.
It's very, and I don't know if this is like, because I know like Mistborn, the first three Mistborn, three question mark, I don't know.
No
I know
clue.
the first era of Mistborn, and I think the first couple books in the second era of Mistborn are pretty early for Brandon. Like he didn't really get into his Stormlight Archive stuff yet.
Okay.
So I don't know if he's improved at all. And to be honest, after this, I don't know if I care to find out.
Valid.
But the humor is incredibly juvenile. It's giving to people who have never seen actual funny people who think they're very funny.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Like the middle school class clown,
Of course, yeah.
where it's like all of his friends think it's that dating video guy who's like, all of my friends say I have a great sense of humor.
Right. Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, I didn't come away from it being like I've wasted my time. Like what I did like, I liked a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the sum total of the parts. I was like, I'll pass, thanks.
Yeah, that's super fair.
There's other stuff I'd rather read. Okay, let's see. What is next for you? Uh-oh.
What?
Tender is the flesh.
Oh my God. Okay.
Speaking
So,
of books you hate,
boy, Book Talk really did me dirty with this one. This was around the time that I was discovering that Book Talk has a lot of really bad recommendations.
yeah, they're
And this
wrong
is,
most of the time.
yeah, this was also around the time that it was becoming increasingly clear to me and many other consumers of Book Talk that everybody's just recommending the same 12 to 20 books. Um, this book is the most boring book about eating other people I've ever read in my life. It's so dry. There's like, so the premise is the world, some kind of like disease came in and fucked up all the animals, so they're no longer edible. And so, in order to consume meat, people have to consume people. And there are different like breeding plants and like processing facilities where humans are bred and grown and processed. And the protagonist is a man who works at one of these places. And it's all kind of about the society and how it functions where humans eat other humans. And all the humans who are kind of grown to be consumed, they're not taught to speak. You don't have any type of like relationship with them. You just treat them like a stupid, dumb animal. But what happens in this book is really fucking weird. This man has this like one, I can't even remember what they call the humans that need to be consumed, but he has one that he has to take home. And then he ends up falling in love with her and
Of
fucking
course.
her. And it's like, it's very bestiality vibes because this woman cannot speak, she cannot consent. He has a bunch of sex with her, impregnates her, and some really vile shit happens. But this book likes to use, it
Ugh.
tries to use like shock, like it tries to shock you into being
Right.
horrified with like the grotesque levels of detail they go into when it comes to like processing and cutting up humans and shit like that.
Yeah.
But it's so fucking boring the way that they do it. Like it's not good. Like the descriptions are not good. The story is boring. The protagonist is a nothing person. Like the ending is an unsurprising, and I hated it. It's not good.
All right.
Yeah. It took me a long time to get through the book. It's not a long book. And I listened one thing I did like the audiobook, the narrator has a very nice voice. That's about it though.
Oh. All right.
So boring. Do not recommend.
Let's see. Oh, my next book was The Knight of the Swords by Michael Moorcock, which apparently is the first book in the Coram series.
What's that?
When was this written? 1971. Okay. This book is some like quintessential 1970s fantasy where it's weird. It's esoteric. You are not entirely sure what the fuck is going on most of the time. And I didn't hate it. It was
Okay.
fucking weird. It was fucking weird. Like he at some point Coram, the main character, I believe he gets his hand cut off and an eye removed. And then he gets his eye he doesn't get his eye replaced. He might do. But I know he gets an eye patch. And he does get his hand replaced. But his like eye patch, no, he does get his eye replaced because it lets him see like the spirit world, but he can't turn it off, so the eye patch helps him turn it off.
Oh, it's like a manual eyelid.
Yeah, but he can still see out of it with the eye patch. It just keeps the spirits from like no. It's sort of like the old H.P. Lovecraft story where the guy develops a way to see into the like beyond the veil, as it were. But
Okay.
once he like sees beyond the veil, everything beyond the veil can now see him.
Okay, that's spooky.
Yeah. And that's basically what this eye does. And he goes on this long journey, Coram, into like all these different worlds and air and like it's funky. But it's super short. Like it's only barely 200 pages.
Okay.
And I had a good enough time with it, even though it was weird. And I was like, what's going on, brother? I don't understand none of this.
Haven't done enough LSD to understand.
That's like 70s fantasy for you.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm gonna do another one because I also have about as much to say about it.
Okay.
It is. Where did it go on my button? The Forging of the Dark Sword by the two authors, Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hackman, the two people who wrote and created the Dragonlance for D&D.
Oh, cool.
And I believe they also helped create Ravenloft. I could be wrong though. Don't
Dope.
hold me to that.
Okay.
But this book has nothing to do with D&D. This is just another fantasy from the 80s, I believe. And it's more weird shit. I liked this better than the last Michael Moorcock book. Just because it's like it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like a kid who was abandoned as a child turns out that he's capable of wielding an evil sword that
Mm,
he intends to use for good, but
okay.
he's also like extreme edge lord like emo guy with like long black hair, and he's always mad and brooding, and he's unnaturally good at like in the blacksmith. He's always in there hammering away.
That's beautiful.
It's great. I loved it. Purely for like the old like trashy fantasy novel aspect for it. Like it's not
Yeah.
doing anything that's blowing the doors off, but at the end of the day you're like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Those are
Um
always fun.
ooh, and a fun one for you. Ice Planet
Oh
Barbarians.
my God. This book, I listened to the audiobook like often in public because I would listen to it just on my little
No,
walks.
don't bury the lead. What kind of book is it?
It's like alien porn.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, here's the premise. You start the book, it's all told from the main character's POV. Her name's Georgie. That's not true. It's also told from the Ice Planet Barbarians POV. And those chapters were read by a man. So there's two people reading this audiobook.
First smut, the
Yeah,
budget.
I know, right? Um the premise is the main character, Georgie, she wakes up one morning and she's not in her bed, but in fact on a spaceship. Her and a number of other young, hot singles
Of
have
course.
been kidnapped by unnamed aliens. We don't
Breastfully women.
really find out about them. They are, I would say this book very had like a like Sookie Stackhouse type energy to it. Like the main character was like very Sookie coded. Like
You mean
she
like just getting passed around from all the dudes? That kind of?
no, not yet.
Oh,
Actually she doesn't really get passed around. She has one person. But
because
she's like
when I think Sookie Stackhouse, I think getting passed around the fucking neighborhood, dude.
right. Okay. I just mean in terms of like tone and attitude. Like she doesn't take shit from anybody. It doesn't
Oh,
matter
okay.
how old or powerful or strong they are. She's like from Florida. Like I think Sookie's not from Florida, but she, like same
No.
energy. I don't know. Anyways,
Yeah.
she this alien spaceship that they're on crash lands, and her and like a number of other women are stranded in this like spaceship wreckage on this like ice planet. And so Georgie
Hence
is
the
one of the
name.
exactly. Georgie is one of the only women who has like her faculties about her after they land, so she decides to go off in search of like food supplies, anything that can help them. And instead she finds this big ass blue alien man named Vectal who is just out like hunting or something. And what ends up happening, I'm gonna go into full spoilers for this book for because
Nobody's reading it.
there's a lot to cover here. Um the this alien finds her and he's immediately like overcome with arousal because he finds out like there's this thing amongst their species that is like a mate call, or like you identify like your mate. Like it's very kind of like werewolf that way, where it's like you identify your like fated mate amongst like someone else, but he finds it in Georgie. And it's like described, I can't remember what the name of like the thing in their chest is, but it's like their life force, and it like purrs and it like comes to
Oh,
life and
come
starts
on.
resonating, and that's how you know you found your mate. And he finds her and he's like, oh my god, this is my mate. He's like so like immediately so into her, and they obviously don't speak the same language. And I think he saves her from like an ice cave. It's very like Luke on Hoth, where he's like upside down in a cave hanging from his ankle. Um, and that's how he finds her. And he immediately starts eating her out. Like
Hell yeah, brother.
non-consensual eating her out. And
Oh
who would
my
have
god.
guessed she loves it.
Yeah, of
And
course.
Then they
Who
like
wouldn't?
it's that part problematic, obviously. But it then like
He just doesn't understand the culture.
well, that's the argument they make. It's like, well, he didn't know.
I was making a joke.
No, but
That's
like
not supposed to be how it
that's
is.
her inner monologue as she's essentially being assaulted by this dude.
Ah,
And but it turns out, oh wow, he's really good at it. And also they're
yeah, I
like
bet.
trapped in this cave together for a while. Um and so like they start fucking and
Pound
he
town.
yeah, I have to read one quote from it that is my favorite quote. I don't remember I don't have oh shit, I had it open before, but I don't know if I do anymore. Oh yes, I do. It wasn't a monster come to eat me. It was this monster who's come to eat me out. And when I heard that, I was walking around my
Tomato, tomato.
neighborhood and I like started cackling so loud. Um but anyways, they
No,
keep
no, no.
calling the planet not Hoth because like that's the amount of creativity this author had
Come on,
in
man.
creating this world. Because let's be
Right.
honest, this book isn't about world building. This book is about fucking a giant blue
Yeah, I
alien
mean,
with a
fair enough.
dick that is like ribbed for her pleasure. So they end up falling in love.
All makes
Who would
sense.
have thought? And
Who knew? The fastest way to a woman's heart, fellas, just
assault.
just splitting her in half.
Yeah, obviously don't do that. But this
No,
book
don't
is
do that.
please don't do that. Um what ends up you find out that like the reason that he has this like mate resonance for her is that they all have these like parasites living inside of their bodies. It's very Trill like actually in a way,
Mm,
except
mm-mm.
it's not like a it doesn't hold like personalities of lifetimes. It's just like a giant like little giant like prawn that they put in the body, and then it like allows you to live in the cold not Hoth planet environment and also be very strong and fast. And Georgie needs to decide if she is going to accept the symbiont
Of course she does.
or die. And it's like, what's she going to pick? Obviously she chooses to accept this parasite.
Tough choice.
And there's enough like there's a part where she and Vectal go back for all of the other women in the ruined spacecraft, and it turns out, oh my god, there's just the right amount of women for all the single guys in the alien colony where they all live, because their species are dying out and they need to repopulate the planet.
Hmm.
So they bring them all back, and then there's like 20 other books. Like there are so many other books in this series. One of
Sarah
them,
J. Maas, eat your heart out, dude.
yeah, one of them is called Ice Ice Babies.
All right.
And
Well, I think we can move on.
the cover art is two infants, like it's like a stock Getty image, and they're just blue.
Mm-mm.
And
Mm-mm.
I think the other books follow like the other women who are on the spaceship, and their different relationships with their alien mates.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it was fun.
Okay, let's see. What's next for Ooh. Gang? Let me tell you about a series that had me by the throat. Called His Dark Materials.
Oh,
I read all 3 of the His Dark Materials books uh last year, technically, asterisk. And it I didn't really vibe with the first one
fair.
because I think Lyra is one of the most wretched little brats ever put to text.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the world building a lot. Big, big Lord Asriel fan.
Yeah.
Big Yorick Burnison fan.
Mm-hmm.
Big, uh, the cowboy guy.
Lee
Forgot his name.
Scoresby.
Lee Scoresby. Big Lee Scoresby fan. Big Serafina Pekkala fan.
Mm-hmm.
Lyra can kick fucking rocks.
Yeah, she was the toughest character to vibe with in that series. For me, too.
The Golden Compass is pretty good. I liked it. But I own all three, so I was like, fuck it, I'll just read the next one. And boy, the second book is really burying the lead. Like, how are you gonna drop something so good after something that was kind of mid?
Mm-hmm.
It introduces Will. We stand a Will till the day we die.
Mm-hmm.
Best boy, and he tamed the unruly and wild Lyra.
He did that, yeah.
Um,
With manners and good sense.
yeah, and telling her to like shut up and behave.
Yeah.
Uh, the subtle knife, the second book in the series, is remarkably short.
It is, yeah.
I think it's only like a couple hundred pages,
Mm-hmm.
but my man Phil Pullman managed to cram a lot into those 200 pages.
Yeah.
Will loses fingers. He gets a dope knife that can cut the fabric of universes. Lyra complains, most of it.
Yeah.
Um, Pantalaimon complains for most of it.
Yeah.
We meet the professor, Molly? Question mark.
I don't remember her name.
She's great.
Yeah.
Uh, where the first book was kind of like, it's sort of like a children's aimed fantasy adventure. The second book was like, all right, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk multiverses, gang.
Yeah. Ooh, I think it's Mary. I think her name's Mary.
Mary, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you're kind of on board with the concepts that the subtle knife is putting down, the fact that this knife can cut into different universes, the amber spyglass goes, buckle up, we're going everywhere.
Yeah.
And I don't even know, I cannot in good conscience even explain what happens in the amber spyglass because it would ruin everything.
Mm-hmm.
Go read it
Yeah.
and then cry like the rest of us did.
Yeah. That series fucked me up. I mean, I read it a long time ago. I was like 18 when I read the books, but I like it had a very deep impact on me for a very long time after I finished reading the books.
I'm almost 36 years old and it had a deep impact on me.
Yeah, that's because it's so good.
It's great. Folks, go read them because the original like Golden Compass movie with Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig, bad.
It's really bad. It doesn't even
Even
cover the
though,
whole part of the. It doesn't even cover the whole
yeah,
Golden Compass.
yeah. Daniel Craig, great Lord Asriel.
Mm-hmm.
Nicole Kidman, terrible Mrs. Coulter.
Yeah. Ruth Wilson, perfect.
The
Mrs.
HBO
Coulter.
show did it better, but I like the stuff that it did for the subtle knife. I think is a grievous error. Like they fucked up a lot of shit.
Mm.
It kind of soured my opinion on the show.
Oh,
However,
interesting.
however, the Lyra in that show is great.
Well, we still need
Mrs.
to finish the show too.
True. The Mrs. Coulter in the show is good.
Yeah, Ruth Wilson, real good.
Um, kind of all I feel about it. Like James McAvoy is Lord Asriel. Forget it, dude. Not
Yeah,
not for me.
he's not quite like imposing enough.
Yeah, because
Doesn't
Lord
have that
Asriel has
same
like big.
presence.
Lord Asriel has the kind of vibe of like someone who can just kind of like turn their head and look at you, and you're like, I'm very sorry.
Yeah, fully.
All right. That's it for those. Next up for you is the Starless Night, Starless Sea.
Oh, okay. I have a
Right.
lot of like mixed feelings about this book. So it's by Aaron Morgenstern, who wrote The Night Circus, which I loved, 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 loved back in like 2011.
Hmm.
And this book is both very wonderful in the sense that I loved the experience of reading the book. It was very sensory driven. It was like an ASMR video. Like
Oh.
everything was described in such a lovely, cozy, satisfying, beautiful way.
Mm.
There's a lot of like hidden worlds imagery and storytelling, and all of it's very kind of wrapped up in this little mystery with like other universes being described in these interludes, kind of all wrapped up in this world of like books and libraries and secret library societies and things like that. um but at the end of the day, like, it wasn't really about anything. Like there's not
Oh,
a cohesive plot. There's like an insta love piece to it that I didn't super
just
vibe with.
vibes only.
Yeah, it was just like it was like cinematic ASMR where there's no
Sure.
plot, but it's very lovely to be in that world. Like it reminded me of like one of my favorite ASMR creators, Moonlight Cottage, who does historical cinematic ASMR where she'll do stuff like come to my Georgian era hair salon and get your
Yeah.
hair cut. And everything she does is so perfect and wonderful, and you just have the loveliest time watching her pretend to cut your hair in the, like the 1800s or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's no plot, and that's exactly how this book felt to me too. So I would not say don't read it. I would say don't expect like a story.
I mean,
Like, just
if
expect good vibes and you'll get
if
it.
if movies can like, there's vibes, just like pure vibes based movies out there.
Yeah.
I would say Drive is a vibes based movie. There's not a lot going on in that movie, and
Yeah.
people love it.
Hmm.
You can have a vibes based book. It's harder to convey, but you
Yeah.
can do it.
But Aaron Morgenstern's writing style is just like heart achingly lovely. Like, I loved The Night Circus. It was so fucking good. And this
Oh,
is not The Night Circus, but it is same level of just like beautifully written prose, but just with not a very intense plot.
all right. Let's see. Where are we at? It's my turn.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, the next one is one that I fucking hated.
Ooh.
And this might upset some people. Maybe. I don't know. How is it? There it is.
Controversial?
The Critical Role book about Vax and Vex. Kith and
Okay.
Kin. I have never read something more dull and like this shit just treaded water for like 400 pages.
400 pages long?
How long is it actually? Let me double check. It felt like it took years. It's almost 352.
That's hefty.
The first of all, I have beef with Vex and Vex in their really weird relationship that they've got with each other. It's
Mhm.
borderline incestuous, gang. Knock that shit off.
Yeah.
And they continue that shit in this book. Like they get separated early on, and then they spend the majority of their time apart, like pining for the other one.
Mm.
And it's like, you are twins. Cut this shit out. This isn't how
Mhm.
twins act, please.
Mhm.
But it was just really boring. Like they didn't do anything. Like it
Except
just
Pine.
fully, yeah, it fully wasted my time. And they came across like this group of people who needed help, but another group, like they got separated, and like Vax was with one group who thought that the group that Vax or Vex ended up with were criminals, but really they weren't criminals. It was just
Okay.
like, let's all just gather around and sing fucking kumbaya kind of bullshit. Where they were like, hey, we just all misunderstand each other. It's okay.
Hmm.
It was really like I got this because I was like curious, and I wasted an Audible credit.
Oh, wow. That's damning considering you spent one of those Audible credits on Akatar.
That's true. I also spent one on It Ends With Us, but I refunded it. I I did not refund Akatar.
No, I didn't either.
I
It's
didn't
still
refund
there.
this either, but I still didn't like it. Uh, let's see, how many do you have left?
I have a
You have
technic
three.
three, yeah, because yeah.
Um, let's do your next one, which is The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi.
Ooh, okay. This one was super fun. It is about a retired pirate named Amina Al-Sarafi
Thus the
who
name.
mhm, is just trying to live a quiet life with her daughter, and adventure comes calling. And I would say there's not a ton of character development, which is fine for this
Yeah.
book because all it is a jaunty nautical good time on the high seas with a woman in her 40s who has like Gail Decarios esque knee problems. And it's kind of like this woman wrestling with her desire for a quiet life with her daughter safe somewhere, but also
The
this woman
lure of
she's
adventure.
got the hunger for adventure and riches and discovery and getting her strength back. And there is a cast of like very quirky, fun characters. It's a wonderful, just like piratey tale. Like, I would, anybody who just wants a jaunty good time on the high seas, super recommend. The author has a wonderful way of describing like smells, which is
Ooh.
something that like I feel like not enough people focus on describing other senses besides sight and sound. And I love when an author can describe and bring scent and like other senses into the description of a scene or fabrics or anything. Like
I
it's a
can tell you,
very
as a writer, describing smell, especially if it's a very unique one, is next to impossible.
yeah, and it's I think it's super noticeable to me when someone does it well.
Mm.
And I would say Shannon, is it Chakraborty? I probably butchered her
Uh,
name.
Check Raborti,
Okay.
hopefully.
So sorry. Um, she does it really well. Erin Morgenstern does it really well as well. And those are the things that
Mm.
like I really appreciate. I love like rich sensory descriptions of things. Both of like Starless Sea and The Adventures of Amina Al Sarafi do it very, very well.
This one's been on my list for a while. Haven't gotten around to it.
Yeah, well, I should bring
Well,
you my copy.
I say that, but I don't actually. I don't have Audible credits anymore.
I have a hard copy of it. I'll bring it.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really
okay.
good.
Let's see. What? Oh, another book that I didn't like. It's from the same author of the Arthur Morgan Demon Hunter book series.
Okay.
Uh, Rhett C. Bruno and one other person, Jamie Castle.
Did they both write the Arthur Morgan book too?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize it was two people.
Um,
Or
this
forgot.
was one of the most generic fantasy books around. Um, there was nothing particularly wrong with it, but it didn't do any. It like it barely kept my attention, and I couldn't tell you what happened in it. I couldn't tell you what characters were in it, but it did not do it for me.
That sucks.
Uh, but it also didn't offend me either. Not
Just like
like
tepid
the
water.
fucking Critical Role book did. Like when a brand like this is specific to me because I when I say when a Brandon Sanderson book is more entertaining than a fucking Critical Role book, then we're in trouble. But the general consensus is like, yeah, of course.
Mhm.
But I don't know, like Web of Eyes was just forgettable,
Mhm.
and that's literally all I have to say about that. But you, however, have the Legends and Lattes series to talk about.
Yeah. Okay. So Legends and Lattes released first, but I started with Bookshops and Bone Dust, which is the prequel, but it was released after.
Okay.
And I went into Bookshops and Bone Dust knowing nothing about Legends and Lattes or how it ends or how it starts. And so, if that is the case for you as well and you want to read these books, I would honestly recommend starting with Bookshops and Bone Dust because I think it adds a little bit more to like guessing about how the plot will turn out, even though the plot is very, very low stakes. It's like this injured upstart young half orc or maybe full orc. It's very D&D based without being
Right.
like D&D. And it's like Bookshops and Bone Dust starts with this like injured orc in the middle of her adventure needing to like recuperate in this very small town for a couple of weeks while her leg heals basically.
Sure.
And she meets this like cute little like mouse creature. I can't remember what the name of the species is. But her name's Fern and she just kind of helps her like revitalize a bookshop. And it's really sweet and cute. Like there's enough in the plot that you're kind of like, "Ooh, I wonder how this will end." Or like I just wonder what they'll do next. Like it's very just like a cozy slice of life book
Right.
where you're not really guessing anything like massive with the plot. It's just like, "Ooh, I wonder what choice they'll make here or like what they'll have for dinner or what book they'll read next." Like it's described as low stakes fantasy and that's exactly what it is. But if you're in a state where that's all you have capacity to consume, like I went through these books when I was super burned out and in the middle of winter, and it was so perfect because it was just like a cozy, like cup of tea. And
Right.
there's a ton of like baked good descriptions and like book descriptions. And it's like the equivalent of like going to a cozy little tavern and having your crusty bread and like hearty stew and like mug of ale and sitting by the fire for a while.
Hmm.
And Legends and Lattes is very similar to that. It's just like Viv is the main character, and it's more kind of like at the end of her adventuring career and just wanting to kind of like settle down somewhere and open up a coffee shop and everything that happens in between there. It's really cute. Travis Baldree, the author, is also a voice actor and he reads both books. So the audio books are very lovely. He does wonderful voices for all of the characters despite like most of them being female. He still does a great job and it's so lovely and wonderful. I loved both of the books so much. Super recommend.
This is also what I actually have these on my Audible list
Mm.
because I managed to squeeze them out when I was abandoning my Audible subscription.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten to him yet because I've been on a physical book tear,
Yeah.
but I'll definitely get to him.
Yeah, they're so good for multitasking with. Like I listened to both of them when I was like on my walks or reading or not reading. That was reading. When I was cooking. It's like they're good like multitasking books. Like if you want to play a
Right.
game while you're listening to them, you can kind of just like like it's nice in the sense I think sometimes with audiobooks I get stressed out because I'm like needing to hyper focus on everything the narrator is saying so I don't miss any details. With these books, it doesn't matter. If you zone out for a few minutes, you've not missed any crucial part of the plot. Like,
Right.
and that's not an indictment on the quality of the book. It's just kind of meant and it gives you permission to just kind of give not your full attention to it, and that's okay. And it's still like you still know exactly what's going on, and it's lovely.
All right. Let's see. My next book, man, 3 in a row. Uh, I read Orconomics, or rather listened to by can't read the author's name. By J. Zachary Pike. And perhaps this is my fault. Because based on a title like Orconomics,
Mm-hmm.
with the cover of like a dollar bill on fire with like an orc's face on it, I was expecting something along the lines of like Yahtzee Croshaw or Terry Pratchett.
Right.
It wasn't. I was expecting something funny and satirical, and I think that's what this guy was going for.
Oh,
But
yikes.
brother, you missed the broadside of the barn. I don't know what the fuck was like. There was every time I listened to it, I was like, what are we doing? This is not it, brother.
Brutal.
Uh like I think it could have just been that I misinterpreted what this book was. Like I was expecting something else. I was expecting like a Yahtzee Croshaw tongue in cheek making fun of like both the fantasy genre and also the capitalist systems that are crushing us all to death.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't really it.
Shit.
And I was like, well, I mean, maybe that's my fault because I didn't look at the like I had heard uh Daniel Green talk about it
Mm.
and he said he liked it and I was like, okay. And then I remembered that as much as I love Daniel Green, we do not agree on everything.
Yeah.
But it could have been worse. It could have been Kith and Kin.
Valid.
Uh, let's see. I think you've only got one more, so I'm going to double up
Okay.
and talk about a book that I actually don't need to talk about all that much because everybody knows now. James Clavell's Shogun
Oh.
is one of the best fucking books I've ever read. And now that the show's out, everybody knows it's good.
Mm-hmm.
This shit is uh almost 1200 pages. I believe the audiobook was like 50 hours,
60?
something like that.
Oh my god.
It was hefty.
Mm-hmm.
It maybe not quite 60, but I remember it was a significant chore.
Right.
Um Not a chore to listen to, just like I
Mm-hmm.
spent a lot of time listening to it.
Yeah.
Uh and because the show's out, I'm not even going to bother like describing the plot cuz you at this point you know it.
Yeah.
But fuck, this book is so good. I'd also like to note that I read it before the show came out. Thank you very much.
Okay. But did you know that the show was coming out when you read it?
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to read it before the show came out so that cuz I like to do that. If something seems interesting to me and I see that it's coming out as a movie or a show or whatever, I'll read the book first because
Yeah.
I want to know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah.
And then inevitably I get disappointed when the show or movie comes out. But with Shogun, it didn't.
That's always
We still have
nice.
to finish the show. I think
Yeah.
we've got a handful of episodes left, but
Mm-hmm.
it's so good.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And
Like,
it's
I don't think there's been the kind of that kind of quality, like razor sharp TV since The Americans.
wow, yeah.
And hey, gang, go watch The Americans. I know you haven't seen it.
I know. The only other person I know who's seen it is my dad. And he was like, I loved that show. I was like, why don't you tell me about it? But actually, I got my mom to watch it and she loved it too.
Oh,
Yeah, she watched all of it. I was really impressed and proud.
guys are over here talking about Breaking Bad and shit. No, watch The Americans
hmm
right
It's
now.
funny because I so used to be the person who would like rush to read the book before movies and shows came out. And I don't know where like I lost that person, but I am no longer her. I will watch a show without
It's
reading the
only
books.
stuff that really seems interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because if like if something comes out that's like based on a book, unless I'm like, ooh, I like the sound of that, then
Yeah.
I don't care. And Shogun really, when I saw the trailer for the show, I was like, this looks fucking sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's based on a book? So I went and looked it up and I was like, a fucking 1,200 pages? And then, so I listened to it. And then afterwards, I bought the rest of the series.
Mm-hmm.
And the shortest one is like 400 pages.
Wow. Hefty.
I think combined, all 6 books, I think was like six. No, it was like 5,000 pages combined.
Wow.
It's gonna take me the rest of my life to read that series. All right, time for your last book,
Mm-hmm.
which is part 3 of All the Young People.
All the young dudes, which is a fan fiction. One I have
What?
one I've spoken
You've
about.
brought that trash here?
I spoke about the second one on
Yeah, I
last
know.
year's recap. Um it ruined me. This book had me fucking staring out the windows on public transit, watching the
Oh
rain
boy.
drip down the windows. It is so fucking sad. Okay, so this one recap. All the Young Dudes is a Marauders era Harry Potter fan fiction.
Right.
And it is seen as like the quintessential kind of like canonic telling of that era. And
Right.
it really centers, it's all told from Remus's perspective. And it's basically, I think it begins around when they graduate from Hogwarts and then go through the war years to like the end of where the series is basically.
Hmm.
But one thing the author doesn't do is ever retell anything that canonically happens. So she'll kind of just fill in the blanks and talk around it in a way that is like really satisfying and kind of like completes the bits that you don't see. And yeah, it fucking ruined my life. It's so sad. It's so fucking sad. You like if you know Harry Potter and you know how it ends for these people, it's not good.
Most of them are dead.
Yeah, and
In fact, if not all of them.
there is a song by this guy. Everybody fucking loves this guy. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's like Noah Kahan. Oh, I don't know. Noah something. He has a song called "The Bridge Between Villages," and it is literally like about like these dead wizards from the 70s. So listen to it when you finish as you finish it, cry a little, go for a little walk. It's so sad. I really enjoyed it. Lovely, super good read. I never need to read any Harry Potter fan fiction for the rest of my life because the whole thing is kind of soured for me with how fucking shitty J.K. Rowling is.
Yeah.
And but I do love when fandoms kind of like take back the narrative and make everyone gay, non-binary, like in all the ways that like make sense for the characters. And I don't know. It's nice to take back a story and characters and make them your own. And
Yeah.
I think it, especially in the case of like the Harry Potter world, do that for sure.
Yeah.
Wrest it away from that horrible woman's crusty hands.
But also, it's okay to put it to bed.
Yeah, I think I'm like good now. Like I don't need to read any more Harry Potter. I mean, I'm like in my mid 30s now. Like I think
And
I'm
honestly,
okay.
it seems like this is kind of like that's kind of it. Like the all the young people is kind of or all the young dudes, excuse me.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not here to condemn people that are still reading Harry Potter fan fiction. I just mean for me
I
personally,
am.
I've read so much Harry Potter fan fiction in my time as a fanfiction.net OG ridiculous.com OG reader. AO3 is like new for me. Um
Yeah,
read
you
the
kids
fan
don't know how
fiction
you
you
got
want to
it.
read, but I can tap out now. I'm sated with at least Harry Potter specific fan fiction. That's
No,
not to
that's it.
say that I won't read other fan
Mm-mm.
fiction because I have read a lot of Yakuza, Mass Effect, and
Fast and
some
Furious.
Fast and the Furious and some Baldur's Gate fan fiction.
Cut it out.
No.
Okay. All right. All right. My last book is I intentionally saved this one for last because it was life altering and it's another damn near 1200 page book. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell
Mm.
fucked my shit up to a degree that I can't read normal books anymore. This book was so good that it not only did it take me like 6 months to read it, because I started it, loved it, then went through a reading slump, so it just sat on my nightstand for like 6 months while I didn't touch it, and then I eventually picked it back up and got through like 600 pages in only a couple months. It's about it takes place in sort of Regency, like an alternate Regency era England,
Mhm.
where magic has kind of fallen off. Nobody does it anymore, and the societies of magic are just a bunch of fat, gross, like Aristotle, like aristocrats sitting around discussing theory, and nobody's practicing magic anymore.
Mhm.
And Mr. Norrell comes around and he actually does magic, but he does it in like kind of a dickhead way. Like whenever he does like he proves that he can do magic, but he does it in a way that forces all of the the aristocrats to like give up their pursuits forever. Like big gatekeeper energy.
Yeah.
Um and then Jonathan Strange is just like naturally good at it. It's in D&D terms, it's like a wizard is Mr. Norrell
Mhm.
and Jonathan Strange is a sorcerer, someone who's just innately good at magic.
Mhm.
And the book covers like 10, 12, maybe 15 years.
Mm.
I think it's from like 1800 something or other to like 1812. And it's just kind of like a chronicle of their life and how they come together. They're friends and then they're not friends. And then it ends on a cliffhanger where you're just like, oh, okay. And then Susanna Clark said that she was writing a sequel, but it wasn't working out, so she wrote Piranesi instead.
Oh, okay. Is it set
So
in like the same world?
no.
Oh, okay.
So who knows if we'll ever get a sequel? But like
Wow.
this is a hard book to recommend
Mhm.
because it's almost formatted like it reads like a Jane Austen novel.
Mhm.
It has like margin notes, like a textbook
Mhm.
that are in universe. Like a character will reference some book of magic, and then the hell are they called? It's not margin notes.
Footnotes.
Footnotes.
Mhm.
The footnotes will talk about like who wrote that book and why they wrote it, and usually make some like cheeky aside about how they're kind of wrong about what they wrote.
Mhm.
Like the footnotes, it's one of the most, it's such a bizarre book that, but it's like all of the characters are so rich, all of the descriptions are sumptuous. The language is exactly how Jane Austen would have written it. It's so good, but it's such a hard book to recommend because it's such a specific interest. Like if you're looking for a fantasy book, this ain't it, brother. If you like Pride and Prejudice, if you like magical stuff, give it a try. But also beware, it's fucking 1,000 pages.
Mhm.
It's worth it though. And if you're really desperate and curious, watch the BBC show with Bertie Carvel and Eddie Marsden.
Yeah, I super enjoyed it despite not knowing anything about the book. Um, well, I knew like a little bit based on what you had described to me, but you don't need to have any kind of like pre-knowledge of the book's subject matter to enjoy the show.
Right. The only thing that's lost is kind of the way that the book is formatted, in
Mhm.
that like obviously you're getting the sort of Regency era language, but you're not getting the way like you're not getting footnotes in the show,
Right.
and you're not getting the like weird at times like Suzanne Clark would kind of speak to the reader through the book. Like she would say the reader would be keen to under like, but she wouldn't do it very often. Like it wouldn't
Okay.
be normal. It's really weird.
It kind of reminds me, like based on what you've described, it reminds me of like a series of unfortunate events by Lemony
I've never
Snicket.
I've never
Th-
read those.
They're children's books, but there's extensive footnotes in all of the books, and but they're in universe footnotes
Mm,
to give you more information about some of the characters or more context into like what it means when a character is doing something. It'll define words for you in very silly ways, and it like is an integral part of the experience of reading and enjoying the book. And it's hard because you can't really, unless you have like a narrator uh, like in the show telling you what's going on, you can't have that same relationship with the
yeah.
material.
And in Jonathan Strange, sometimes like in the actual book, a character will reference like a almost like an urban legend that they've heard of, like, oh well, the Raven King came down and he gifted, seven wives, seven rings, or
Mhm.
something like that. And then it'll like have a little footnote number, and you go down, and the footnote ends up being like 3 pages long because it's detailing what that story, the urban legend, what the actual story of that legend is.
Right. That's really fun.
And it's like but he never gave them 7 rings. It was one woman, and he gave her like a boat. That kind of stuff.
Okay, that's fun. I like that.
But it's really long. I love Jonathan Strange. I love
Hmm.
Mr. Norrell. And we love Childermass in this house.
Yes, we do.
But that's, hey, gang, that's all the books we read last year.
Yeah, that's a pretty good collection, especially on your part. It
I read 2,000-page books in,
was like within a month of each other, it felt like.
I had finished Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell and like immediately started Shogun,
Hmm.
which I don't personally recommend.
But if you're in the mood to consume books, then
Yeah. I
yeah.
mean, even with the second book in the first Law series, Before They're Hanged, I read 300 pages in as many days,
Nice.
which is something I've never done before. I've never sat down and read 100 pages in a day.
That was very much my relationship with like the Harry Potter books when they were coming out. Like when Half-Blood Prince came out, I went to the bookstore the day it was released, came home. I was home around 1 p.m., started reading, finished it by the next morning. No,
No sleep.
the next night. I fell asleep for like 6 hours, woke up, read the
Mm,
rest, cried for the next 3 days.
right.
Hmm.
How could they do that? How could they just kill Dumbledore like that?
So crazy. The funny thing is, I was on LiveJournal that day before going to the bookstore to pick up my copy. Someone had put the Snape kill Dumbledore spoilers on LiveJournal that day. Some piece of shit took pictures. This is back in the day where you needed to take pictures with a digital camera, attach a USB cord to your computer,
Yeah.
upload the images somewhere other than LiveJournal to host the images, so like PhotoBucket or some shit.
Image Shack.
Then post it. I think this was even before the Image Shack days.
Wow.
Then post it on LiveJournal after going through 6 steps. And they still did it because it was photos of the pages. And I remember reading it.
Like that has to be fake.
I read it, mind wiped it. Like it was so traumatic, I completely forgot that it happened. Because when I got to that part in the book, I was shocked. I was like, there's no way. But then days later, I was like, wait, I saw this on LiveJournal the day I got the book. But it was so unfathomable to me that that would be the trajectory the books take that I was like, that's obviously not real. Eject. Truly wild.
Interesting because I owned all of the hardcover Harry Potter books. I could not tell you where they've gone because usually we're really good about keeping books.
Hmm.
Uh, as you can tell by our giant ass bookshelf in the living room
Yeah.
and the one behind me.
Yeah.
But I don't know where those Harry Potter books, like it was all 7 of them in
Yeah.
hardcover. It was like first editions. I don't know where they went. But I can tell you I made it to the Goblet of Fire before I was like, I am not interested in this anymore.
How old were you when you were reading them?
They had like just come out.
And you were like, no, this isn't for me.
I don't know. When did they like first come out?
Then like late 90s.
So I would have been like 9, 10, 11, 12.
Like
And
I was like 9 when I started reading them. Because Goblet of Fire came out the Christmas 1999 or 2000.
I would have been 11.
So I was like, I remember it being grade 4 for me. So it would have been grade
Right.
5 for you.
Yeah.
And then I think, God, now I'm maybe mixing up.
But I I'm not sure why, but Harry Potter didn't do it for me as a kid.
That's so valid. And honestly,
Even though
Fuck J.K. Rowling. Fuck her books.
even though I had like stopped reading by Goblet of Fire, I still got the. No, I didn't. I think I only had up to Goblet of Fire.
Okay. Ooh, okay, yeah. I got Goblet of Fire for Christmas, December 2000, because it came out summer 2000. So
Okay.
I had started to read the books. So this would have been grade 5 for me that I started reading the books.
Right.
And then I got it for Christmas in grade 5. Okay, that makes sense. And then that was my whole life until I graduated high school.
I think a part of it, and this is probably telling, but I think a part of the reason why I fell off reading and I wasn't really interested in Harry Potter is because video games, bud.
Yeah, see, I didn't have access to those. So that makes total sense.
Like PC gaming was pretty crazy in like the 2000s.
Yeah, that's super fair. I only had the Animaniacs game, and it kept fucking up our family computer to the point where we had to get rid of the game. And I was so sad because I loved that game. It was the only game I had access to until I got my first Game Boy Advance. And then things were
And then you
different.
played Golden Sun.
What's Golden Sun? No, I only played Pokemon. That was
Mm.
the only game I had.
Golden Sun's really good. And people in the comments will say it. They'll be like Golden Sun fucking slap.
I had Pokemon Ruby, and I played the shit out of that. And I also had Link to the Past, um,
Of course.
which I shamelessly printed out guides on how to beat everything, folded them up, and kept them in a little shoebox under my bed. Regret nothing.
No. Honestly, Zelda games should be played with a guide.
They're so hard. I'm not trying to solve puzzles in my downtime. I
No.
hate puzzles.
All right, gang. We did it. That's our recap. That's what we read last year. And we will be back
In 2 weeks'
in
time.
2 weeks with our new book that we're going to start.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to read Fourth Ring.
Wing.
Did I not say that?
I think I heard ring.
Oh, Fourth Wing. Which, if I'm being honest, dreading.
I'm dreading it in a sick, excited kind of way.
I'm dreading it.
You picked this book.
I know.
I
We
would like
have
to
to.
state
We
for
have
the
to.
record.
We have to do this book. It sounds so awful.
I understand. Yeah.
But
I
I
have it.
am
It's ready to go.
so I'm not looking forward to it. But like because the last few times that we've done a book where it's like, ooh, this sounds so bad, it's been a miserable experience.
Kingdom of the Wicked.
Kingdom of the Wicked, uh, The Darkness Outside Us, to a degree, there was still some great moments in that.
I kind of like that. It was kind of fun bad.
It was kind of fun bad.
Six of Crows. Sorry. So many people love Six of Crows.
Six of Crows was pretty. Although we got some great. I feel like we got great material out of Six of Crows.
TBH, in retrospect, I kind of really enjoy Six of Crows. I will say one of the redeeming qualities of Six of Crows, the world is kind of fun. That's all I'll say.
So true. But hey, Leah Bardugo, your world is not fucking Zarpunk.
Ew, just don't say that word. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? Anyway, we're leaving. We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. We're reading Fourth Wing. We're gonna hate it.
Yeah.
You'll love it. We'll see you next time.
Mm-hmm.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.